The clearer you are on who you are and what you're here for, so what you're striving towards and why that matters to you, the less likely you are to compare. I think that when we're not certain on who we are, we can fall into questioning, should I be doing it this way, or should I be more resilient in these matters, and so on.
I had the pleasure of speaking to Briana Bowley, a nervous system and performance coach who has helped hundreds high performers like us overcome challenges such as burnout, adrenal fatigue, scarcity thinking, and being constantly on edge. In this episode, Briana shares her powerful method and offers practical tools and strategies that we can easily incorporate every day to help transform our nervous system. This will allow us to find balance and resilience in our personal and professional lives so that we can be clear, intentional, and precise on how we live. This episode is a must listen for anyone who wants to enhance and improve their life. It has already helped me challenge and improve some of my thinking. Welcome, Briana, to the D8 Training Podcast. Briana, thanks for taking the time to join us.
My pleasure.
So let's get straight into it. What is a nervous system and performance coach?
Sure. So in a nutshell, what I do is I support athletes and entrepreneurs moving through our fight, flight, freeze response. So a stress response or a survival response, depending on how you want to refer to it. And I do it through the lens of helping them to perform better. So whether it be, like I said, with athletes, helping, with performance, with competition, with recovery, or with business owners, helping them to mitigate stress better and manage pressure, make good decisions when they're in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. Is there a best state to be in, like flight, fight or freeze in high pressure situations?
Yes, so the best state to be in is what's called ventral vagus state.
Could you say that again?
Yes, ventral vagus state. That's a scientific name. I refer to it as like your safety state or your social state. It's when you're able to access logic, you're able to access creativity, problem solving, you're making decisions and moving from being open and receptive rather than from this kind of anxious, gripping, tense perspective.
So you've got flight, fight, freeze, and then the fourth state is ventral vagus state. How do you move clients into the ventral vagus state?
It depends on the individual. For someone who has maybe grown up in a bit more of a turbulent environment, safety state's going to be pretty unfamiliar and unknown for them. So it becomes more difficult to connect them to it. But in a nutshell, the nervous system learns through experience. So it's giving them the experience of safety and having that become something that's familiar, having it become something that they're able to access. To give you kind of a short answer, it's by training the system, rewiring the system to handle stress better.
Thinking of a personal example, so I know once I went into a freeze state and then I fled. I was back at university, the teacher came and approached my friend about something, I was involved and I fled.
Yep.
Friend was not very happy and then I looked back and I went and apologised. I approached a teacher. What advice would you give for someone like myself that just fled that situation?
I think that a lot of the time our stress responses, fight, flight, freeze, get a bad rep. They've got a bad reputation, that it's something to avoid. But the thing is, they're actually signs that our nervous system is doing what it's meant to do. So they're there, I call them survival states because they're literally there to keep us alive. To use your example, your system can't tell the difference between, maybe I might be about to get in trouble or, I might be judged or whatever it may have been for you. It can't tell the difference between, say, that and I'm about to die. I'm about to be kicked out of the tribe. I'm going to be left out on my own and I'm going to starve to death. So in your situation, your body responded the way it did because some part of you felt like it wasn't safe and that you were going to ultimately die. I would say that how you handled it was actually beautiful because after the event you came back, when you dropped back into safety, you were able to make better decisions. But it would be building the capacity to stop it from happening in the future. It would be about building capacity to hold whatever triggered off the flight response. So this is where it becomes a little bit of a case-by-case basis because we'd have to dig into what was it that you were afraid of that had you run away? Was it that you were afraid of judgment? If it was that you're afraid of judgment, it would be, well, how can we get you to a point where you feel safe in being judged, where you don't have that reaction to being judged and you can stand there and hold it with dignity without needing to get away. Does that make sense?
100%. And I appreciate what you said, because this was a memory that I always think of, and I always thought that I was wrong. But the fact that you just said to me, I handled it well by coming back, you've changed my whole viewpoint.
I love that. I love hearing that.
What led you to focus on coaching and personal development, specifically within the fight, flight or freeze?
I get asked this so often, and I actually find myself giving a different answer every time, purely because there's not one thing. For as long as I can remember, I've had an interest in human behaviour, even down to, I don't know if you ever played The Sims as a kid, or you're familiar with The Sims.
What is The Sims? I heard...
So it's basically like a simulation game. You create your Sims. It could be a family, it could be one Sim, and you just go about their day, build relationships, build their home, build their family, climb their career ladder, which, now that I think about it, it sounds really bizarre to be playing that game, but
it's similar to Minecraft these days.
Yes.
You build the villages, you build your base.
So I was obsessed with that game as a kid, and for me it was because I really enjoyed seeing the difference between what had my Sims thrive and what had them not. And so in the game it was like, if they hadn't had a good night's sleep, their health would go down, and then they would start to lash out at their partner in the game, or they'd get a bad review at work and get demoted. And so it was kind of this game of like, how do we have our Sims like thrive? I was obsessed with that game. So I think it's always kind of been in me that I love human behavior. I love understanding what has people at their best, what has them at their worst, how to mitigate that when they're at their worst. But I think in terms of like the nervous system stuff specifically, probably at its core, I think growing up in turbulent dynamics, I mean, I was heavily bullied as a kid. And some part of me kind of would look at these dynamics and go like, why is that? Like, that behavior doesn't make sense to my logical brain. Why are these people who have done nothing to lashing out at me? Or, seeing dynamics as a kid that just didn't make sense to me. And as I got older and sort of started to dig more and more into understanding psychology and that, I started to realize that a lot of what I witnessed weren't intentional decisions. They were these survival mechanisms that our body just does. And then we step away from once we've calmed down and go, oh, I didn't respond the way that I wanted to respond. It was just kind of this slow process of getting deeper and deeper into understanding humans.
Sounds like you were just drawn, and it was something that always intrigued you.
Definitely, yeah.
So how does leveraging the power of the nervous system help sustain peak performance under pressure?
The nervous system connects to almost every single organ within the body. So when we think about it that way, our state is determining everything. It's determining our brain function, it's determining our internal dialogue, it's determining what information we're processing and then what we're making that information mean. It's determining how well we digest food, how many nutrients we take in when we digest food, whether our heart rate elevates, whether we have a slower heart rate, recovery, sleep, like it impacts absolutely everything. So when we consider that, if you're in a chronic state of stress, then it's the lead domino that knocks everything else down. You're not going to be able to sleep well. You're not going to be processing food well. You're not going to be recovering well. You're not going to have the ability to, push the weights that you want to be able to push. You're not going to be able to communicate well. You're going to see things as an attack when they're not. Whereas if you're operating from safety state, everything's optimized. So you're going to sleep well, you're going to digest food well, you're going to be able to, hit the weights that you're wanting to be able to hit and so on.
Yeah, I'm a big believer it's 80% mindset and then 20% everything else. And I love the quote, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you can't.
Yes.
You're right either way. So how do you turn someone from this highly stressed state into a safe state?
I'm trying to think of the most simple way to share my answer to this, because no two nervous systems are ever the same. So what is going to, say, support me in getting into safety state is potentially going to send you further into stress, and vice versa. So more than anything, it's about starting to understand what triggers us into different states. I actually suggest to my clients tracking their states. I encourage setting up a spreadsheet and actually noting down like safety state, fight, flight, freeze. and then starting to build a relationship with what that state looks like for them as an individual. So keeping in mind that no two nervous systems are the same. So my fight response is going to look different to your fight response, and so on. Like, I'll run my clients through a process where I actually get them to think of, as an example, if we're going to go with fight response, the last time that something really pissed them off and made them angry. And I get them to tune in and go, okay, what feelings were there? What sensations were there in your body? So if I tune into fight response in my body, I can feel immediately my palms start to get sweaty. I can feel that my cheeks start to heat up. I can feel it's like this big rush of heat comes up into my upper body. I can feel that my throat starts to tighten a little bit. And I can immediately feel like my jaw and my shoulders start to tense up. So for me, knowing that and having that information allows me to now be able to track when I'm going into a fight response. For you, you know, with your flight response, you'd be able to track back and go, okay, I remember when that happened, this and this were going on. This was my internal dialogue. This is how my body was responding. And so we can start to track what your signs and symptoms are of these different states. And so we can do the same thing for safety state. We can tap people into, you know, if we say the time when you felt the most nurtured or the most supported or the most at ease or the most trust or whatever kind of cue is what they're trying to tap into. Tune into, how did that feel in your body, right? Like, what thoughts were there? And for most people, it's, you know, they feel powerful, they feel confident, they feel relaxed, they feel at ease, they feel like life can be trusted, they trust themselves. And so tuning into what's going on in the body, well, my jaw's relaxed, like I feel relaxed, I'm not bracing for what, you know, for some invisible threat. And so when we can start to kind of track that, then we can start to consciously actually create more of that. As an example, I go into fight response when someone speaks to me in a particular tone. I can start to create boundaries and those sorts of things to avoid situations like that. Or I can start to communicate in a way where others don't respond to me with that. Like a clean home for me, I'm so aware that a clean home is something that has me instantly drop into safety state. So being aware of that, I can prioritize putting myself in situations where I'm in clean spaces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I believe what gets measured gets managed.
Yes.
And you need to track it to be able to bring it. So when I'm in a flight or fight phase, writing down what I notice and what triggered it down, and then doing analysis on that.
Yeah.
Or comparison to when I'm in that safety space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then with that, would you use techniques? So you might be shallow breathing that I notice, you know, I get nervous and I start shaking, for example, then putting, okay, what can I do? Can I focus on breathing and then start doing breathing techniques?
I kind of work across, well, 3, I guess, main umbrellas. So outside in regulation, which is looking at environment, so environmental factors, relationships, communication styles. Bottom up regulation, which is looking at things like gut health, looking at, you know, is like if we're holding excessive tension in our muscles, that's going to be signaling to the brain that we're not safe. Looking at more of like a body-based way of kind of managing. And then also what's called top-down regulation. So that's looking at perceptional stuff. Looking at, say, that dynamic that happened last week with my boss when he yelled at me, working to shift my perception of that so that, you know, I'm not hanging on to that he's a bad guy and that he's, you know, out to get me, so that I'm no longer bracing around him. So yeah, outside in, top down, bottom up.
It's simplifying it for my sense. So outside in, I want to get fit and healthy, but I'm hanging around people that smoke, drink, go out late. That's not going to support me. How can I change that environment? Bottom up, look inside the body. Well, all I eat is McDonald's for breakfast, lunch and dinner. That's not supporting me, or I have, you know, lots of sugar, which spikes the insulin. So it's okay, how can I change that? And then top down is limiting beliefs.
Yes.
I believe that all bosses are jerks. From there, it's okay, how can I shift that belief?
Yes, exactly.
I like that it's quite simple to do, looking at those 3 different areas.
Yeah.
Reading some of your work, something that I have liked that you've done is less is more to performance and mindset. And especially because we all do so much. I know personally, working full time, running a business, managing the kids, the household, so much going on. Can you explain why less is more and provide an example how this approach has transformed yours or your client's journey?
Yeah, totally. So when I talk about less is more, I'm speaking across multiple levels. So I'll kind of speak to multiple levels here. The first being, if we kind of zoom into like our day-to-day, in a nutshell, our nervous system is very like primitive in nature. So it's designed that Like, we're built to sit in a cave amongst our community and eat berries around a fire. We're not designed to know what's going on the other side of the world. We're not designed to have these devices in hand where we've got, all of the information available to us and we're contactable at any time. We're designed to, know our tribe, and that's it. Instead, we're able to access people from all over the world. So it's a lot of stimulus coming in all of the time, which is why I think a lot of mental health issues are so rampant. So anxiety, depression, like, these are all symptoms of not being able to handle the stimulus coming at us. So keeping that in mind, we're already on some level in overdrive just because of the world that we live in. And so when I talk about less is more, it's about intentionally taking in more information and working smarter, not harder. I use the analogy a lot of like the eagle. And so I had an experience a couple of weeks ago where I was out at a farm and I started to notice that at a particular time of day, the eagles would all come out and actually like perch themselves in the trees and like scan out over the paddock. And after noticing that they'd come out at the same time every day, I realized that it was because at the same time every day the farmer would come out and shoot the pest animals on the farm. And so the eagles had figured out that instead of having to go hunting themselves, they could sit in the tree and wait for the animals to be killed and then come down and get them themselves and essentially do less to get the same result. That was kind of cool to witness, that these animals they're already known as being incredibly efficient animals. And so to add on to that analogy, they're such high performing animals. They're apex predators. They have no natural predators out in the wild. And when they hunt, a lot of the time they're not actively flying. If you watch an eagle, they're actually just catching the updrafts. And so they're soaring on the updrafts. And then when they see their prey, then they spring into motion and they dive and they do what they need to do. But for the most part, they're actually very lazy birds. So that's kind of the analogy that I use, that we want to ensure that in our day-to-day, we're making ourselves the lazy, efficient eagle where we're getting the result, but we're only moving when we need to. The rest of the time, we're either using resources to relax, we're using resources to recharge, we're using resources available to us so that like we're only needing to move when it counts, rather than just kind of being the scampering rat that's like doing a million things at once but not actually getting anywhere. And then if we zoom out from the day-to-day, I speak about operating in phases. What I see a lot, and again this makes sense because when we're in survival mode, we're in survival mode because some part of us thinks that resources are scarce, be it money, be it food, be it time. There's this paradigm of like, make every day count. Like, you might die tomorrow, so like don't wait to do the things that you want to do. But the undertone of that is actually that time is scarce. And so what I see a lot of people doing is they're pushing to get everything done all at once. If we blend all of these different colors together, we get brown, right? Like, we get a poo color. It's a bit of a pooey dynamic, right? So I talk about, if you're trying to create anything in your life, operating in phases so that you're doing less, knowing that, say, the next 5 weeks might be, if I go with like a sporting analogy, the next 5 weeks might be purely working on my posture so that then when I go to hit that deadlift PB, I'm not going to throw out my back. So those 5 weeks is, instead of trying to work on your posture, like hit this PB, plus stretch so that my muscles aren't getting tight, plus perfect my nutrition, it's pick the thing, the lead domino that's going to knock everything else down, and do that. And accept that maybe for those 5 weeks it's a little bit more boring, but it's getting more done by doing way less.
Completely agree. Focus on one aspect, and then ironically you get more done. One thing we tend to say to clients in the gym is that want to improve their health, just start eating more protein. Yeah. Predominantly breakfast, make sure you're satiated with protein, and just by starting that they end up craving less sugar, less processed food, their mind's feeling better, so it's got that domino effect of others. But we're not asking them to focus on everything because it's too much, just that one aspect.
Yeah, less is more. Just focus on the protein, disregard anything else. That's the eagle soaring on the updrafts. It's minimal effort for like peak result.
You spoke about that scarcity mindset, and I did your archetype quiz on your website, and I went through the questions and I was the big cat. Before we get into the big cat, can you tell us about this quiz and how it can help us in the life?
I created the quiz because what I was finding was that the nervous system learns through experience. So if our experience has been only ever knowing stress and all of our role models in life are in a stressed state, we don't actually know anything different. The nervous system hasn't had the experience of what it is to be relaxed, what it is to be confident, what it is to be powerful. And so it's so normal that we don't know. We don't even realize that we're in overdrive constantly. And that was my experience. I never realized that I was living in this perpetual state of anxiety until someone showed me. So I created the quiz because I wanted to set people up with the opportunity to actually get a real, accurate representation of where they're moving from, of where they're operating from. It's a series of questions that just kind of highlight the thought processes that are driving someone's decision making, that are driving the way someone shows up in their world. Highlights whether they are that soaring eagle, whether they're the big cat that's, in this predator model trying to avoid starving, or whether they're the deer in the headlights where they're the prey and they're avoiding being preyed upon.
So there was the big cat, the soaring eagle, deer in headlights.
Yeah.
And can someone move from one to another?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's a great question, because what I do want to really hit home here is that states aren't permanent. They're just states. We shift out of states all of the time. So take myself for an example. I had a rather chaotic experience just last week in my world where I watched myself become deer in the headlights. Like, I sat frozen for an hour while I had all of this chaos happen around me. For the most part, I'm the soaring eagle, but in this particular moment, I was the deer in the headlights. The quiz is looking at your dominant state, so the one that you operate from most often. As we train our system and rewire our patterning, our nervous system becomes more adaptable and more flexible so that we can move between the states really quickly. The deer in the headlights, it's not a bad state to be in. It becomes bad when we live there permanently. The big cat dynamic, that kind of more anxious, fast-paced state, it's not a bad thing. It's a survival response, and it's there to keep us safe. It's there to have us survive whatever threat that we may be perceiving. It only becomes a bad thing when we're not shifting out of it.
When I read the big cat, it was quite interesting. It said that my system perceives that resources, time, money, energy, opportunities are scarce, and you must stay on high alert, constantly hunting, chasing and pushing forward to avoid starvation in some form. So I might feel wired but tired, obsessed with the next move, unable to rest or slow down, frustrated and reactive, and feeling like I have to fight for every inch of progress. And I was definitely able to relate, and I'm sure many parents can, with kids as well and competing priorities. So using me as an example, that big cat, what strategies or tools would you recommend to someone to get out of the big cat and move into the soaring eagle?
I would really look at, like, what is it that has you in that big cat energy? Is it that that's all you've ever known? That's the only kind of energy you've had role modeled? And to be honest, for most people, that's the case, especially for women and mothers who are in jobs as well. We're very much role modeled that we have to be on all the time and that we have to juggle a million different things all at once. And so it's rare that we're given that role model of what relaxation really looks like. So yeah, it would be looking at, well, is it just that that's been role modeled to you, and then supporting your system in over time, getting more and more of a perspective of what it would be like to move from relaxation. And that could be something as simple as just like, okay, for the next 2 days, I want you to just, as you go about your day, walk slightly slower than feels comfortable. Right? I mean, again, because everyone's system is different, the most effective and efficient way to do it would be different for every individual. I mean, for me personally, I was definitely the big cat when I first started to really get into nervous system work. And for me, a lot of my work was actually just slowing down when I walked around, speaking slightly softer and more slowly rather than this fast-paced way of speaking that I used to speak from, and just really like intentionally slowing my day down, which signals to the body, which signals to the system that, oh, it's safe. I don't have anything to run away from.
I can completely relate. On the weekend, it was go, go, go. I was doing things, and I promised my daughter a movie night that night. So we'd have dinner, we'd tidy up, and we'll relax and watch a movie. So as we were watching the movie, I sat down on the couch and I felt guilty. And I'm like, I should be working. This movie is targeted at my daughter, not at me. Why am I watching this? And then I had to recalibrate myself and go, I'm here because I'm with my daughter and I'm spending quality time with her, and that's actually an efficient activity.
Yeah.
And then reflecting on that, I've noticed many instances in life where that's the case. Like now in the evenings, and I've probably been doing this for the last 3-4 months, that's my gym time, dinner time and kid time. Nothing else matters because it will all get done. But it actually takes conscious work to go, that's okay, we don't always have to keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, to dig even further into that now, hearing that information, I would look at, and it sounds like you're already shifting it, so congratulations, that's amazing. I would look at, well, what's the thing that you're afraid of missing out on? Like the big cat archetype is very much like, it's the predator. So when I say predator, you know, we think of big cats in the wild, they've got to chase down the gazelle so that they can eat. If they don't successfully hunt, then they're going to miss out. They're going to go without resource. So a lot of the time the big cat is working towards something and there's scarcity around what they're working towards. It's really looking at, well, what's the thing that you're either consciously or unconsciously not wanting to miss out on? And it sounds like you're probably working towards some goals. And the big cat is very common for athletes and business owners because they're ambitious individuals. So it could be that they're working towards winning that competition and first place is scarce. So understanding what we're afraid of missing out on can really give us a lot of space to work with figuring out more productive ways to get all of our needs met without being in that guilt of like, I can't be doing this because that's going to have me miss out on this. Yeah.
In some of the cases, it's just as simple as, well, I've got to let go of the house being constantly perfectly clean. It's okay, what's more important to me? Because my daughter's more important than a clean house. Yes. I love your quiz, so I'll definitely put that in the show notes. So anyone that's interested in doing it, just jump into the show notes and you can do that. And then you've also got the Bowley blueprint. Does that relate to the quiz or is that something separate?
They're indirectly connected. So the Bowley blueprint is actually the body of work or the methodology that I use with clients. It's the framework that I lead clients through and I support them. It's also recently become a certification program. So I lead coaches and facilitators through and essentially teach them my methods so that they can go out and incorporate them into the work that they're doing.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you.
So moving on, we have athletes that come and train here in the gym, and then we've got junior gyms, so they're the young athletes that aspire to be the next footballer, rugby, soccer or AFL or tennis player. I know that you work with a lot of athletes. Let's start with, what is mental resilience?
Mental resilience, I believe, is the ability to keep showing up despite adversity and despite challenge. I think the nuance of resilience is that resilience becomes available to us when we're living in alignment with our values and with what we're trying to create. What I've come to notice is that we lack resilience in the areas that aren't meaningful to us. We have resilience in the areas that mean the most to us. To kind of simplify that, I believe mental resilience is the ability to keep going and to adapt and be flexible in times of adversity or challenge.
I can definitely relate, and I just thought of my son. He came back from a 2-day trip and he's tired, he's exhausted, he can't help around the house. And then he's like, can I go play at the school? I just want to take my soccer ball and go for a run. I'm like, well, if you can go running, you can put away all your clothes. You've got the resilience in what you want to do.
Yes.
But how do I know if I have mental resilience?
This is where humans do this interesting thing where we expect ourselves to be what we're not. And I think a lot of that stems from a comparison. I think that everyone has mental resilience, but it's about what are you resilient in. So if I use myself as an example, like golf. Golf isn't my thing. I have no interest in golf. If someone said to me, like, Brie, you've got a really crummy golf swing, I mean, I'm not going to be resilient in going through the challenge and adversity of trying to get a better golf swing because I don't care about golf. But if someone said to me, you know, as an example, Brie, like you're not getting the results that you want with your clients, and this challenge came up around trying to get better results with my clients, that's meaningful to me. So you better believe I'm going to be resilient in figuring it out and going through whatever I need to go through in order to get to overcome that. So everyone is resilient. It's just, what are you resilient in? And you know you're resilient when you just keep showing up no matter what. But I think the key is to not compare, because, you know, if I were to compare my resilience to, say, your resilience, I might find myself shaming myself because I'm not resilient in the same things that you're resilient in, but it's simply that we just have a different value system.
The comparison's massive these days, especially with social media. Do you have any tools or strategies to get out of the comparison state?
The clearer you are on who you are and what you're here for, so what you're striving towards and why that matters to you, the less likely you are to compare. I think that when we're not certain on who we are, we can fall into questioning, should I be doing it this way, or should I be more resilient in these matters, and so on. But, you know, when we know who we are, it's sort of water off a duck's back. You know, I just last week had a dynamic play out where I had someone criticizing the ways that I go about certain aspects of my life and essentially telling me that my way of doing it is wrong. And if I didn't know who I am and what's important to me and what's meaningful to me, and I didn't have a bigger vision for what I'm trying to create and what I'm moving towards, then it would have been really easy to actually take that feedback on board. But because I know who I am, it was like, oh, we just value different things. So his way of doing things is different to my way of doing things, and that's okay. It's just two different ways of doing things. To limit comparison, I would say take the time to really get to know yourself and ask yourself the question, like, if no one else had an opinion, if no one else's thoughts mattered, what would I go and do? And if I knew I couldn't fail, what's the thing that I would go out and do? And that will give you your answer as to who you are.
Definitely can relate. It's having that vision, your purpose, what you're striving towards, and then anything else that comes in, you can block out that noise. If your goal is weight training, you're going to do weight training, go down that path, and someone goes to you, come and join the football team. I actually don't have the time to commit. I've committed to weights. I'm doing the weights as opposed to looking around going, okay, I'll do football this week, next week cricket, next week this. And then you're trying to run around and going, why aren't I as good as anyone?
Yes, yeah, exactly. The thing is, when I encourage people to get really clear on what they're looking to create, often the feedback is, well, I don't know. But I really believe everyone knows what they want to do. It's just whether or not they're willing to navigate the fear that comes with that, because I think being clear on what you want to create creates a lot of fear and doubt. Who am I to do that? Am I good enough to do that? Do I have the skills? Do I have the resources? And so on. But I think at its core, we all know on some level what we want to do, and it's hidden in the things that annoy us, the things that upset us, the things that we want to change, the things that we're passionate about, the things that energize us, the things that we naturally want to spend our time doing. They're all indicators of like what's for us.
Yeah, definitely. And then working those plateaus, you need to trust the process, go through it, and you will hit a plateau eventually. So what role do you believe strength plays in helping athletes develop physical and mental strength?
I believe that how we do anything is how we do everything. So I believe that strength training offers us an insight into how we navigate challenge, how we navigate pressure. When we really dig into what strength training is, it's not just training the body, but it's training the mind as well. And so we're going to see at what points we give up. We're going to see at what points we make excuses. We're going to see at what points we push through. From a purely mental perspective, I think it offers us an opportunity to really get to know ourselves really well if we're paying attention. From a physical standpoint, I mean, it's going to strengthen the body. If we're, working programs that are in alignment with what we're wanting to build towards, it's going to make the body adaptable. I would say it's like laying a really solid foundation for the skyscraper that we're looking to build. If whatever our pursuit is, if we're looking at athletes and competitive sport, if the competition is the skyscraper or the competitive career is the skyscraper, then strength training is laying a solid foundation where when push comes to shove and you're facing tough times, like you've got that solid foundation behind you.
I find with the strength training personally, like I couldn't do a chin up for like 2 to 3 years after having kids. I think my son was 3 when I was able to actually do a chin up, and it was quite a lot of work. And then I was able to do one, and then within like a month I was able to do three to four. So like, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And it's something that I can always reference back going to, yes, it's taking a while, I can hit it, and get there. And that's same with increasing weights and just showing up and coming to do the gym. It's that consistency there.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well it offers you that kind of measurable sense of progress. It is a reminder that sometimes it's slow progress, but you inevitably get there. When you work the work, it works.
And what do you think are the biggest mindset blocks that hold people back in fitness and sport?
I'm going to kind of answer this from maybe a slightly different perspective. So the nervous system actually affects our thoughts and the way we perceive the world. So I think a lot of the time what people think is a mindset problem is actually more of a state problem. So it's the nervous system. So for example, if we're operating in safety state, our thoughts are going to be thoughts that are aligned with confidence. They're going to be thoughts that are aligned with trust. They're going to be thoughts that see challenges as being on the way rather than in the way. Whereas if someone's in, say, a fight response, that's a more predominant state. They're going to see challenges as being in the way. They're going to see challenges as being reasons why they can't. Life's going to be a battle and everything's going to be hard. If someone's in a freeze response, then freeze response is very much like a shutdown. And so someone in freeze, their thoughts are going to be, I can't do this. Who am I to do this? It's hopeless. What's the point? I'm never going to get there. To answer your question, I actually think it's less about limiting beliefs and mindset, and it's more about, well, what state are you operating from? Because when we shift the state, the thoughts shift too.
So if I'm in that freeze state going, I will never get there, I'm not strong, I'm not built for this, what strategy would you use to move out of that state to get into that safety state so they do come up and show up for the gym or whatever else it be in life?
Freeze is often when a threat feels so overwhelming and we can't see a way out of it that we just shut down. The aim of a freeze response is to wait it out until the threat leaves us alone and then we can spring into action. There's actually a video that circulated the internet, it went viral, of I think it was a gazelle being chased by a lion, and the lion catches the gazelle and the gazelle just lays down and plays dead. The lion starts to actually bite in and then something distracts it. And for that moment that it's distracted, the gazelle gets up and runs. And so it's in freeze response, playing dead, because the threat was so overwhelming. But as soon as the opportunity was there where the threat was distracted, it sprang into action. So the purpose of freeze is essentially, it's either a feedback that something's too overwhelming and it feels too much bigger than us for us to actually take action. And so I would say the solution to freeze is either breaking goals down into smaller chunks so that it's less overwhelming, or figuring out, like, what's this thing that feels so daunting and terrifying that you're not willing to take action. And I think a lot of the time for athletes who fall into freeze, now this is what I see most often with combat sports, and maybe slightly different with other sports, but in combat sports athletes, more often than not, the freeze response pops up because they're actually afraid of what might happen if they do well. So if they do well, there are probably going to be bigger opportunities open up, which means being perceived by more people, going into bigger competitions where the audience size is bigger, or they're facing stronger opponents. The risk of humiliation is bigger, if they're getting, say, knocked out or injured in front of a larger audience. So it's almost like the risk is greater than the reward, even if that's not a conscious thought. They freeze up so that they don't do well. So it's almost like, I don't like the term self-sabotage, but it's self-protection. It's, I'm going to sabotage my performance so that I'm not then having to face the threat. Does that make sense?
100%. It's like the tall poppy syndrome. If
Yes.
I do better than my parents did growing up, they won't love me anymore. Or if I do well, my friends won't be my friends anymore.
Yes, exactly. And I love that you brought up the tall poppy syndrome, because in Australia and New Zealand, it's huge. It's this unconscious belief, but if I do well, I'll be kicked out of the tribe, I'll be left to try and hunt on my own, I'll probably starve to death. And so of course, if the system's perceiving it as it's life or death, then we're going to go, I won't do well, because if I do well, I'll die.
So athletes that think like that and don't move because they've all got that fear of doing well and then moving to the next level, what do you do with them to help them overcome that?
Sometimes it's a matter of getting them reconnected with their vision. Sadly, I do think sometimes for younger athletes, it can be the freeze comes up because the dream of being good at that sport is actually not their goal, it's their parents. And so they self-sabotage because the kids don't actually want it. It's something that I see very, very often with younger athletes. For those where that's not the case, where they genuinely do want to do well, it's figuring out, well, how is whatever you're protecting yourself from, how can we keep you protected from that while getting the desired result? So if I come back to that example of someone sabotaging their performance in combat sports because they're afraid of the fear of being judged by a larger audience if they do well and then have to go on to fight in bigger promotions, we look at building their capacity to hold judgment, going through the process of feeling what it would be like to be judged and not reacting to it, so that we start to create familiarity and create certainty around those feelings.
I remember listening to Ed Milet, and what he was saying is, okay, what's the life that you want? If you want to earn enough money because you want to stay in nice hotels and go to nice dinner places, start putting yourself into that environment. Because the first time it will feel uncomfortable. You'll come to the nice hotel and you've decided to do valet, but you're like, okay, who do I give the keys to? What do I do? You don't know what you're doing, and then you get to the restaurant, how much do I tip, what there, and then the second time you come, it will just get easier, but you take those small steps so that it becomes comfortable, familiar, and it's just a part of you.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you use that example. I mean, for me in my business, I've witnessed myself freeze up and sabotage aspects of my business over the years because I have that fear of if I do too well, people are going to start judging me and I'm going to have all these eyes on me. And so I went through the process of I would play little games with myself where, say I was out somewhere and there was a big crowd, then I would purposely go stand right at the front of the crowd so that even though people may not be looking at me directly, I had all these eyes of people that could be looking at me, and I'd be standing there cringing internally, but I'd practice holding it and just breathing through the discomfort. Bit by bit, I would, put myself in situations where if I was in a big crowd and I had the opportunity to speak up, I would do it. And I would hold the discomfort of being potentially judged. It's like exposure therapy, if you've got a fear of spiders, the best way to get over it is to have safe experiences with spiders so that your system learns that this isn't a threat, this is safe. Bit by bit, the fear just disappears.
And actually, someone else had on the podcast, I was saying, even with building confidence, if your goals get to 0 to 10, make first 0 to 1.
Yes.
And just focus on that, because if you're focusing on 10, that's scary because you're like, I can't do this, I can't get there. But if you go, I went from 0 to 1, I can do that, that's not too bad. And then before you know it, you're at maybe 15, you've actually exceeded, and you've gone, can't believe I was scared back then when I was at 1.
If you're trying to go from 0 to 10, overwhelm kicks in. That's your freeze response. Whereas 0 to 1 is, that's manageable.
I find that being a parent, it's how can I push my child just enough if they are nervous, but I know, okay, leave it, let them, if they have frozen, let it go. Or, hey, give it a go. I'm going to be here. You can walk out at any time and they'll feel that success afterwards.
Yeah, beautiful.
This has been great. I feel like I've unblocked some of my limiting beliefs.
I'm so happy to hear that. I love that.
Thank you. So what's next for you in the Bowley Blueprint? Any exciting projects?
The main thing at the moment is just starting to get more facilitators out there with this work. I did a tour of New Zealand last year and had the opportunity to connect with some really epic people across kind of different industries and industries that are very different from mine, and they've kind of identified it could be really cool to bring nervous system work into new environments. So really that's what I'm looking at the moment, trying to get this work into places that I don't have the capacity to touch because they're not my arena. I would love to do a bit more of overseas workshops and speaking engagements and coaching. So that's definitely something that's on the horizon, maybe for the later half of the year. And
any particular countries?
I want to get back to New Zealand. I loved it over there. The US is right at the top. I've got quite a few clients over there, but I haven't actually physically gone there yet. I've always wanted to see as much of the world as I can. So if I can do that while also getting paid and doing what I love, then bonus. So yeah, anywhere and everywhere.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to level up their mindset and performance, what would it be?
Get really clear on your why. I feel like it's a cliche response, But I really believe that your why is what's behind everything. Your why gives you access to resilience, it gives you access to adaptability, it gives you access to, creativity and resources that you don't have if you're not clear on where you're going. So, and if you don't know your why, then let your why be exploring it. Our life leaves clues. We're always getting feedback. And so, if you're not clear, then as I said earlier, look at the things that annoy you about the world. Look at the things that activate you, that strike anger or that strike emotion, that strike joy, that inspire you, and start to move closer and closer to them. Because when you know where you're going, then you just become an unstoppable force and you inspire people to do the same.
It makes decision making a lot easier as well, because you can say no to things that don't align with your why and where you're going.
Definitely.
For anyone who wants to connect with you or learn more about what you do, where's the best place to find you?
Yes, I'm across all social media, so Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. On Instagram, you can find me at Briana Bowley as well as the Bowley Blueprint. But I would say the best thing, if you want to get started, jump in and do the quiz. So it's at www.nsquiz.com, because that will really give you a clear indication of where you're at. And with the results, I send out an entire ongoing list of different resources, both free and mini investments, larger investments. So there's something there that's going to support everyone, regardless of where they're at.
So working with you mentioned you've got the free resources that you do, and then you've got the lower and higher investments. So what are the different options that they can have?
I have packages to fit all different budgets and needs. In terms of the free stuff, I've got tons of podcasts, interviews, summits, masterclasses that are available. I've got my 2-week muscle builder program, which is where I suggest people start, and that is, it's 2 weeks to build the muscle of noticing your state and building a relationship with your states. For most people, that's the place to start. It's only $150. People see profound shifts just from starting to notice over those 2 weeks. Oh, like this triggers me into this response. This, sends me into anxiety. There's a saying that I say all the time that is, you can't intervene in a world you cannot see. So we're bringing awareness to the patterns that are in the driver's seat. And once you know that they're in the driver's seat, then you can actually kick them out and take the wheel yourself.
That sounds great. And as we spoke before, it's all about measuring.
Yeah.
When you know, you see it, you become conscious,
Yes.
Then you can make changes. I'll put everything into the show notes so anyone that wants to access the muscle build or look at all the other ways, they can see that.
Beautiful.
Great. Lucky last question. What does the word dominate mean to you?
Ooh. Dominate for me means mastery. I think that if you are dominating, it's a clear indication that you're at a different level. You're fluent in your craft. I would say it's an embodiment of your craft. So mastery is how I'd answer that.
I like that. That's a really good word, mastery and fluent in your craft. Thank you so much, Briana, for your time. This was fantastic. I look forward to re-listening to the episode and learning even more.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into the D8 Training Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow and continue bringing value to more people. Until next time, dominate your life.